Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the E.N.G. Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Amit, with Agile Data Decisions. For those of you just joining the podcast, I'm Christian Gannon, the co-founder of E.N.G. Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your software or tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. So I understand that Agile Data helps enterprises transform technical documents into actionable insights through a human-guided AI platform. By combining advanced generative AI with expert in-the-loop workflows, you deliver scalable, enterprise-grade solutions that support confident decision-making. From high-quality OCR and data extraction to seamless deployment and collaboration, Agile Data empowers teams to unlock insights from unstructured documents faster, smarter, and with precision. Can you share more about your business and your role within it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Christian, for having me on this podcast. I'm Amit Taneja. I'm CEO and co-founder and a machine learning scientist at Agile Data Decisions or AgileDD. The problem we solve is that enterprises have vast document stores. They may have thousands or millions of highly technical or domain-specific documents. And here's the issue. Neither humans nor AI is good at processing those high volumes of documents with good accuracy. So on one hand, humans are really good at using their deep domain knowledge and context of the situation to look into the documents and get that information and make critical enterprise decisions. But they cannot do it at a large volume of 20,000 or a million documents, especially if the information for the decision has to come from that many documents. Now, with AI is amazing. AI can process millions of documents in a day on a scalable architecture. But the problem is the enterprises cannot just trust that the decisions or the data provided by AI at that scale. When you're looking at feeding few documents to AI, it gives you some data and you can make some corrections or use it in your decision making using your domain knowledge. But when the decision is coming from thousands or millions of documents, enterprises find it difficult to trust that information. So we've built a platform for human-guided AI or human-in-the-loop AI, where we achieve both scale and accuracy at the same time.
That's awesome. And just to reiterate, I guess a good analogy might be like a plane, right? Like a pilot, the plane's already on autopilot, it's doing its thing, but the pilot steps in when it needs to give the plane a little bit more direction or if it goes off course, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, is that kind of how your platform works? You want the human to guide the AI, but the AI should run a lot of it on its own.
Absolutely. I think that's a great analogy. Before critical decisions are taken, humans need to review the data captured from highly technical documents. I'll give you some very practical examples in the industries we are working with. The province of Quebec, for example, they are utilizing our platform to capture data from 20,000 pages of documents per month. That doesn't sound like a lot, but for an AI and scalable architecture world, that does not sound like a whole lot, but they really want only accurate information because they are using this information to populate their dashboards that mining companies all over the world are looking at and using that to make their decisions. So they don't want any errors in this. And when we look at raw AI outputs, they are 70 to 80% accurate, even with generative AI and with some standard APIs from major AI companies. So with a human in the loop process, they are able to get information at this volume at 20,000 pages per month, but it's accurate and they feel confident of publishing it into their public dashboard. So that's one example. Another one, we're working with a healthcare domain company that does medical reviews. And so medical review is where, medical review is where you are looking at claims that have already been paid, for example, by Medicare or Medicaid, and you're looking for inaccuracies and even fraud. And This customer and similar companies, they find billions of dollars of Medicare and Medicaid fraud.
Wow.
But to make that happen, they have nurses who need to go through page after page of documentation. Here's another situation where you can't just run it through AI and say, okay, which one is fraudulent? You need to have some expert oversight to say, okay, uh, let's confirm that these are really fraudulent, because there's a lot of there are a lot of things they have to think about. They have to use their precedents, they have to use the domain knowledge, etc. To make these decisions. So with human in the loop AI, we are able to make this process 10 times faster. We are not fully automating it, but we are still keeping human insight into it, but we are making the process 10 times faster.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing. And shifting a little bit, what are some of the major trends that you're seeing right now in the enterprise AI and the software space? Are you seeing anything come out about the noise? I know there's a lot of noise in enterprise software and AI right now. What really is standing out to you? If there are any trends or shifts occurring in the market?
Well, that's a great question. That'll require me quite a bit of thinking to answer, but there's some things I can probably say from top of my head. There's definitely a lot of excitement about being able to use generative AI, but then there's also a lot of fear.
Of course.
So what we are seeing is a very cautious adoption, which is a good thing. Now, I'm talking about, again, I specialize in traditional industries,
Mhm.
mining, manufacturing, healthcare. Uh, of course, something like finance, insurance, banking, and tech world are very different from this.
Of
But
course.
in these spaces, there is, I would say, uh, slower but steady adoption that's going on. It's both at the individual level. I think the individual level adoption of generative AI is it's quite already there, and people are
Hmm.
using ChatGPT and other such tools for their own individual workflows and uh, format this email better, or building smaller workflows. So we are seeing a lot of adoption. People are using it. That's what uh, we are seeing. Um, where we focus on is more scale and accuracy. That's not, these are typically not desktop use cases.
Of
They
course.
they involve much higher document volumes.
Gotcha, gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense. And from what I'm hearing, even within my network in the tech space, is a lot of people, even us in our company, we use chat all the time to help us write emails, automate a lot of things. And we also have some agentic tools that we use as well that help keep us in the loop and keep us updated and then also produce actionable insights from that data, right? But I think there's this big shift at the individual level of people understanding how good the data is and how they can use it to their benefit. But I think, especially in the industries you mentioned, like healthcare and mining, especially in government too, it's going to be a slower shift at an organization level compared to maybe a tech company or a fintech or an insurance company, right? Where it's a little bit easier to make those changes and it's not a compliance issue necessarily, right? So thank you for sharing that. And in this landscape, it's kind of a follow up to it. What's making it easier to operate on it or maybe a little bit harder to operate in right now?
You mean what's making it easier to adopt AI and what's making it
Yeah, of course.
harder?
Hmm.
So it depends on the workflows. I think I have myself used it to write small applications and small wrappers. You can call it agentic in some sense, to, hey, take data from here, do this to that, and make this
Hmm.
page where show me that data. And you can really learn these tricks and use generative to do plenty of tasks like that. I think those are easier to handle. What's really where it's more difficult is when your data is highly sensitive, right?
Of
So
course.
you're dealing with you mentioned compliance yourself, so that is, of compliance and cybersecurity are they have to be respected. I mean,
Right.
if you're dealing with sensitive defense information, or you're dealing with real patient records, uh, uh, and uh, their finance. I mean, there's several use cases where you can't just throw the data to a public large language model, and that's where companies have to figure out what is the approach they can take where the data remains secure and they maintain their compliances. So one of the things we are doing is to offer on-premise installations for some customers who keep their data on sensitive on-premise locations so that the data does not go out and they can uh, just utilize AI within their data center. The other thing we have done is to get compliances. We are now SOC 2 compliant, and we are very close to getting HIPAA compliance so that we can uh, host patient data even on the cloud environment.
That's awesome. And just to touch on that a little bit more too, I actually talked with someone in the healthcare space last week that's doing AI specifically for healthcare, but just for personal health information. So it involves cleaning, it's called PHI sanitizer is what they
Hmm.
focus on. And it's taking all of the names and identities and all personal identifying information off health documents so that labs can use them, right? Without sharing all of that identity because of how personal that is. And she even shared that it's 10 times to 500 times more expensive than if you bought a social security number off the dark web, right? So when we're talking about privacy in a lot of these sectors, it's super important that it's not only HIPAA compliant, it's SOC 2 certification obviously helps too, but also what you mentioned of in-house, right? Not using a API to kind of develop these softwares and have it so that no one can see it, right? It should only be in-house and there should be no risk outside of that. And that's a big shift that I'm seeing. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it is
Mhm.
really tough, right? Especially when you're building out a platform, if you want to test it and you want to make sure everything works, going in-house and dealing with a client in-house is a lot harder than dealing with an end API, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm speaking off base here, but
Absolutely. I mean, there are HIPAA compliant APIs and things like that, but you just have to be
Mhm.
careful where all the data is going.
Of course.
It's a very the running something on a cloud is there's a lot of different technologies and tools that can be used to serve your data, and you just have to be cognizant and careful of the whole tool chain where your data is flowing through. And it's great to
Hmm.
hear about this the PHI removing thing. You
Hmm.
always, I think, for research services purposes, that's great. I think you also have to be careful that just removing PHI does not fully on is not
Right.
foolproof.
A
So
hundred
that's why
percent.
I think some of our customers are going the on-premise route, where really, for one, they don't have to worry about de-anonymizing it. Other, they don't have to worry about some tool chains being used that really were not HIPAA compliant, even though they signed BAAs with
Hmm.
some companies, but data still flew, ran through multiple tools. So there's definitely an advantage of keeping the AI tools within your data infrastructure, even if it's on the cloud.
Hmm.
That way, you're sure that it remains compliant within your organization.
Definitely. And I think with any technology implementation, there's always going to be risk, right? So it's just how can you mitigate that risk to the best of your ability, knowing the information you know, right? And like you were saying, there are APIs that are HIPAA compliant, but they might not be fully HIPAA compliant, right? They might have gotten the certification, but are they really, right? And that's a risk sometimes you have to take, right? For advancement, especially in spaces like healthcare and government and mining, like what you're talking about. I think it's probably similar. And I think that's really important that we mentioned that. And kind of shifting to our next question on that, what does the current kind of competitive landscape look like for you guys at Agile Data right now? Are there a lot of big competitors that are competing with what exactly you're doing? How are you differentiating yourself?
We see very little human in the loop, especially for the traditional technical industries like uh, mining, for example. We are also getting into construction and permitting type use cases. And there is a lot of mention of AI and usage of AI going on, but organizations haven't got around to where how do they address when AI makes errors, and how
Mm-hmm.
to have trust in the AI so that they can use it really for critical decision making. So in that space, in the human in the loop space, I believe there are some few other startups. We are not the only ones, but I think in these industries we are working with, we don't see a whole lot of competition right now.
Of course, of course. And I did want to touch on the mining industries and specifically the industries you work in. I know that as I specialize in marketing and our company does, it's hard to kind of get to some of those decision makers, right? Like I talked to a manufacturing tech CEO the other day and he was saying like to talk to a shop level floor admin, right? Someone that supervises the whole floor of a factory, it's really hard to market to them, right? Especially in a digital age. They're not on LinkedIn, especially in other countries like South America or Asia. It's not as popular as it is in the US. So from your end, how hard has that been, like getting a marketing team or having marketers help you with your business grow and in those industries specifically?
Right. We're taking a multi-pronged approach to this. We have trusted business partners. For example, we have one in the construction and permitting space, one in the healthcare space, and for other sectors like mining, what we do is we have a subject matter expert in our own company who is able to have a knowledgeable, deep discussion with these type of clients, because uh, when you show that you have the domain knowledge, you understand what challenges will they face already when they use AI. I think that really helps, and we are also uh, publishing blogs on this subject. So by utilizing partners, attending these some of these deeply technical conferences in the field, that's how we are trying to address this challenge with some success.
Of course, of course. I think that's awesome. I think you mentioned something that's important, like an omni-channel marketing effort, right? Like we're going to conferences, we have SMEs and the domains that they need to be in that we want to work with, right? Because I think in any startup, even our own, it's really important to understand your customers' pain points, right? And then maybe not you're the expert, you know someone that is the expert to help you get down that path, especially if you know that your technology works to help them. So that's awesome, and I think that's great that you shared that. And shifting a little bit, could you tell me what you're responsible for directly within Agile Data and what kind of your day looks like? I know we talked about what your position is, but your day to day, what does that kind of look like, as personal or as unpersonal as you want to get?
Well, I'm being CEO of a startup. It's a pretty colorful day. Starts at as early as 6:30 or 7 a.m. because we have a couple of customers in Europe. So I meet with the team in Europe early morning and look at any of the issues that we have to address. Then some of my time during the morning is spent with the development team, uh, and I use the afternoons for the sales and marketing activity in the US. Uh, then somewhere between all of this during the day or night, I have to squeeze in the fundraising activities as
Of
well,
course.
and but then also other things like compliance, like HIPAA, and um, and any of the administrative stuff that comes with running the company. Update the sam.gov record, for example. I mean,
Right.
there's a you have to do you have to make sure everything is running smoothly. You have to make sure marketing is running smoothly, sales are running smoothly, the development team is running fine. You're not behind in any of the administrative stuff from insurance to tax to compliance. So a typical day involves touching um, at least two or three of these topics every
Of
day.
course, of course. And I think
Hmm.
in any startup, you have to wear a lot of hats to be successful, right? Especially off
Hmm.
the bat. And I think something that you didn't mention, but I know for sure that you focus on is overall strategy when you're going between all of these departments, right? Maybe not the admin side. Maybe there isn't a huge lot of strategy other than automating it, right? But overall, when you're talking with sales and marketing and when you're talking with your developers, right? I know in the back of your mind, and I know in the back of most our founders' minds is how is this getting me to where I need to be, right? And that kind of goes into my next question of when it comes to measuring success, what financial or performance metrics matter most to you? Is it client acquisition, retention rate, integration success, or something maybe else entirely?
Well, so first of all, that was a great point about strategy. That's something, the way I treat it is that has to be, like you said, at the back of the mind in every activity.
Of
While
course.
talking to developers, working on compliance, talking to customers, all of strategy is always, it has to be guided by what you see, and it has to guide uh, how you take decisions.
Of
So
course.
yeah, that's like it's always there. It always has to be worked upon. Um, Sorry, your next question was, could you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. And I think what I wanted to say one more thing about strategy. I don't want to move on too quick. I want to make sure we dive in as much as we can, but
Yeah.
it's more of like the 80-20, right? If you've heard that, like what are the 80% of activities that drive most of the revenue or most of the activities in the company that go to long-term strategy, and really focusing on high leverage activities and how do you implement that in a team at the front line, right? And so thank you for reiterating that. I think it was an important point to make. But my next
Absolutely.
question was, what financial or performance metrics matter most to your business? Is it client acquisition, retention rate, integration success, or maybe something else entirely?
Yes, so I think it's really driving the monthly recurring revenue and annual recurring revenue. That's always, as a startup CEO, that is the goal, because that's what your investors look at. That is the measure of success. On the other hand, the day to day is different. I can't spend the whole day worrying about MRR or ARR, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the other metrics of success are, how are we able to shorten our sales cycles?
Of
So
course.
we have shortened them. We just completed a sale within a month and a half, which in these sectors
Congrats.
is pretty fast. Thank you. Um, so that's one. How I I personally reach out to our customers to see how they are
Mm-hmm.
doing. Is everything going well? We watch the metrics on our deployments to see the usage, and uh, we want to make sure all it's on the right track. Uh, so that's on in terms of performance, the uh, looking at retention is a day-to-day thing, not just looking at the revenue. We try to anticipate any problems beforehand, reach out to customers that this could happen. Um, so that's how we deal with retention. But yes, that's a performance metric, and being and how fast the sales cycle is, and how many are we closing. That's equally important.
Of course. And
Unfortunately, none of these could be less important than others. It's all we have to,
right, right.
just
Of course. And I
yeah.
did want to touch on, I didn't want to go too fast over that. A month and a half to close a sale, especially in B2B and enterprise solutions, is really fast. I mean, northward of 6 months is like the average, right? 5 to 6 months is usually the
Yes.
average sales cycle just because of how long it takes to integrate and really get everyone that's a decision maker on board with something new and to really implement it and see the value. So that's awesome. I just want to say that's really great.
Thank you. We're getting there.
Yeah, of course, of
Yeah.
course. And
hmm
kind of following along, and I know that we kind of talked about it a little bit, but maybe even more specific, what are your goals for the next 12 months, maybe personally or for Agile Data?
Well, that's a great question, Christian. Uh, I uh, it's interesting how you set your own goals, um, and it's particularly hard as a founder when you think about it. Everything is conflicting with each other, right? So I still keep, have to set priorities. Still have to keep family as a priority, right? I mean,
Of course.
especially when you have kids, you can't just ignore the
Of
family to
course.
run a startup. So that's not gonna happen again, right? So, uh, uh, but then, yes, I mean, our goal really, we are at a critical juncture. We have to show growth, and our goal is to get, really, it's very, very straightforward. Our goal is to uh, get to a priced round within a year, or a Series A round, and we are making fairly good progress toward it.
Awesome. Thank you
Uh,
for sharing. I think you made an important point. For a lot of founders, family and a startup is really hard to balance, right? Especially when
it
you
is.
listed all the activities earlier that are at the top of your mind every single
Mhm.
day, right? Um,
Don't forget
but
health. Don't
yeah,
forget
of
health,
course, of
especially
course.
for middle-aged founders like me, right? I mean, uh, that's also a tough one.
Of course. I think it's
Yeah.
a balancing act, right? And the
Mhm.
whole balancing act, regardless of how I do it, results in little to no sleep, right? For most people. But I think that's an important point you made, that health and family are two big things that are hard to balance alongside of managing 10 plus operations throughout a startup. And something slips your mind and it goes downhill really fast. So it's high pressure
Exactly.
and high decision making abilities need to be had for that, right? Um, but
Absolutely.
kind
Mhm.
but kind of going into my last question, it's a fun one, but it's a tough one. If you had a magic
Okay.
wand and could solve just one problem within your business, what would that be?
Wow, that is a tough one, Christian. To think about that one.
I think if even if you asked me, I probably wouldn't have an answer right away either. And I'm the one that asked the question.
I would say today, where we are, the magic wand would be to get an army of salespeople because we've already developed the product and
Hmm.
we are making good progress closing deals. I think uh, the time is of essence.
Of
And
course.
because time is of essence, the magic wand would be to be able to do sales and marketing at another level at this point. I think there's a lot of excitement going on about AI, but I wish that uh, everybody sees the need for human in the loop faster, and that way our product can get much more traction.
Of
Not sure if
course.
that's a great answer, but I think as a as a practical answer, I hope that that makes sense.
Of course, and I might be biased, but I think
Yeah.
that's a great answer. So, I think that a lot of tech
Yeah.
companies, especially when the product's developed, start to focus more on what the product is doing and, oh, if we implement this or we implement the next thing, right? That's going to make us stand out more. When the reality is, it comes back down to sales and marketing. If your go-to-market strategy and the way you present yourself in the market isn't unique, then you're not going to stand out above the noise, right? And I think that's a huge magic wand question for a lot of founders is how do I make myself stand out? And if I could fix one thing, it would just be to be the go-to for this, right? So thank you
Yes.
for sharing.
Yes.
So if people want to connect with you or learn more about what Agile Data is doing, where can they go and how can they connect?
So they can go to www.agiledd.com, www.agile, D as in David, D as in David.com, and they can directly request a demo from there. They can book a demo or fill up a form to reach out to us.
Perfect, perfect. So I will leave the website link in the description of this video so you can go check it out. I checked it out. I think that is super informative, especially for someone that's maybe a little bit outside the space. I'm not directly involved in the loop or human touch like AI at all, obviously by my explanation, but I think it did a good job explaining at bare bones and to maybe a non-technical level what they do and how they do it. So I highly recommend you check out the website. But other than that, thank you again for joining us today, Amit, and I appreciate your time and insights, and we'll see you guys in the next video.